Tonight we're going to skip ahead to the 9th chapter just for tonight, because the 9th chapter talks about Shmitta canceling loans in the PRUZBUL. And so since we have to write PRUZBULs within the next few days, we should learn this, go through this. So the Rambam says in the 9th chapter, HALACHA, mitzvah to say lahashmit hamalva b'shvius. It's a positive mitzvah to cancel a loan on Shmitta. So whoever has someone who owes him, he's canceling it. And someone who tries to collect a loan, which hadn't been collected, and Shmitta fell in between that time, violates a negative commandment. You shouldn't press him, because once Shmitta cancels a loan, you can't press him. From a Torah law, the cancellation of debts, and I pointed out before that in regard to the laws of the 7th year on the land, everywhere that's called Shvius. The time where we see the word Shmita is only in regard to the cancellation of loans. It's used in Parshas Re'eh about the cancellation of loans. So the cancellation of loans by Shmita on a Torah level only happens in the time that we have Yovel, which is the 7 Shmita cycles, and then the 50th year is Yovel. Yesh Shem Shmitas Karka, because then also the real estate goes back to because the real estate will go back to the owners without any money. Meaning, so any sale in those times is really a lease up to 50 years long. And this is a tradition, an oral tradition, that it only applies when there's Yovel. It doesn't say in the Torah anywhere that there's a connection between the cancellation of loans and Yovel. Our sages said, in the time when you are canceling real estate transactions, means not they cancel, but it goes back to the original owners, you also cancel monetary debts, even outside of Eretz Yisrael. And if the land doesn't go back, you don't cancel loans even within Israel. So from halacha gimel, from a rabbinic level, so loans get canceled on a rabbinic level even outside of Israel. Even though there's no Yovel, they do this so that we will not forget the idea of the cancellation of loans. So he quotes a Balamar, I think it's a Balamar. And the Ran and Gittin that Shmita, so there is an opinion, yeah, it is a Balamar, that there is no Shmita nowadays at all. Back, I think at the beginning we spoke about it. According to some opinions, the Shmita on a Torah level, or some levels Shmita is a rabbinic level. According to the Balamar, there's no halacha Shmita at all. The only reason we keep it is just as a minhag, but it's not even there's no even rabbinic obligation. And the fact that they kept Shmita after the Baisheni was only that was only as long as there was still a beis din that was declaring the new months, Rosh Chodesh, and also declaring the leap years. But from the time that there was no Beis Hamikdash, the time there was no beis din that declared Rosh Chodesh and declared a year to sanctify a Yovel year, even though at that time Yovel was only a rabbinic obligation, there's no Shemitah even on a rabbinic level. That's the Balamar Shita. We don't pass it that way. And the Tumas Hadashan says in places that are very far from Eretz Yisrael, we don't have to keep Shemitah nowadays. The Rush in the Tshuva says in a place where they would collect from a loan, meaning for a written loan that had a document that a contract of a loan, and Shemitah canceled it, we don't criticize them nowadays, but you let them be. Meaning, if someone asks you, should we collect loans? No. But if the place already had established that they do, you let them continue to do that. That's and in our generations, the crown has been returned to its original splendor in many congregations, that we are careful to make a PRUZBUL according to the decree of Hillel, even outside of Eretz Yisrael, and certainly in Kal V'chomer in Eretz Yisrael, we should be very careful about this. Dalet. Ein Shvius Mishametis Ksafim El B'Sofa. Only the end of Shmita ends alone. Shneimar Mikate Sheva Shanim Taseh Shmita. From the end of 7 years, you make a Shmita. V'zeh Dvar Shmita. And this is the matter of Shmita, meaning of the loans getting canceled. And then it also talks about the mitzvah of Hakel. At the end of 7 years, in Sukkot's time, of Shmita, so just like Hakel. So Hakel is when the Sukkot after Shmita, when everyone is at the Beis Hamikdash for Sukkot, the king reads Dvarim to the whole people. So just like that is after Shmita, so to the end of Shmita is what cancels the loans. If you lend during Shmita, you could collect during the year of Shmita. But when the sun goes down on the eve of Rosh Hashanah, then he loses his debt. So Rav Kook mentions the Russian Gittin's opinion is that the fact that Shmita only cancels at the end of the year is only that if you would return the obligation after Shvi is passed, the lender is obligated to say, no, I canceled the loan in order to fulfill the mitzvah of Zed Dvar Shmita. Because Zed Dvar Shmita, we could say, even though Dvar could be a matter, Dvar is also can mean the words, like a dibor. So the halacha is that if the borrower comes to pay you back after Shmita, you say, no, I've canceled the loan. So you verbally say that. And if the borrower didn't say, nevertheless, I still want to pay you back, you're not allowed to accept the loan. But if he says, I understand that I want to pay you anyway, then you're allowed to accept it. So that halacha only applies to the end of Shemitah. But the obligation to not press the debt, whether by you or whether to have based and try to get it collected, that applies from the beginning of Shvius. And when Rosh Hashanah of Shmita, of the beginning of Shmita, says you're not allowed to collect the chov. So that's why there's some people have a minhag to write a PRUZBUL at the beginning of Shmita and also at the end of Shmita because of this opinion of the Rush. The Yesh Omer and the Bach holds that even according to this opinion, there's no so he says that the fact that if the borrower comes and says I want to pay you, you only have an obligation to tell him no. That's if you had lent him before Shemitah. Since once Shemitah started, you're not allowed to collect it. But if you had lent during Shemitah, everyone agrees. Even the Rush would hold that you're allowed to collect it during the Shemitah year. And the only thing that doesn't allow to collect is the end of Shemitah. Meaning the sundown of the eve of Rosh Hashanah. Hey, shachar is apar b'cholka al dasha yom Rosh Hashanah shel motzei shvius. So let's say you shechted a cow and you split it up between different people. So meaning a cow was a big thing, so they were going to pay you for it eventually, but right now I guess they didn't pay you yet, and you thought that today was already Rosh Hashanah because. We don't do it anymore, but I think on Yantif, if you're allowed to shecht an animal on Yantif if you're going to eat it on Yantif. So they shechted it on Yantif. Nowadays we don't shecht on Yantif, but on Shabbos there's no heter, and I think on Yantif it is a lot, but we don't practice anymore. Because they thought it was Rosh Chodesh. Because they thought it was the first day of Rosh Hashanah. But then what happened? It ended up that no witnesses came, and Beis Din said, no, today was only the 30th day of Elul. Now, to have a 30-day month of Elul is very, 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 very uncommon, but that's what happened. So it ended up that was the last day of the year, and they didn't pay him. So now the guy who had shechted it was his cow, whatever, he can't collect the money from the other people. Because Shemitah passed. Because it was now the end of Shemitah, so it passed, it killed the chov. It did not necessarily kill, but it makes you not allowed to collect it. So the Rabbi disagrees with this halacha because according to this is called hakafas achanos. So hakafas achanos means buying from a store on credit. So the Rabbi disagrees with it. He says that halacha is only according to Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, but the Rabbanon, because according to Rabbi Yehuda, if you borrow once, meaning if I go to Shmirel's grocery and I bought something on credit, so that is not considered a loan. That's considered credit. But then once I go back and buy more stuff and add it to my bill, it becomes a loan. It's no longer considered buying on credit. But according to the Rabbanon, buying on credit from the grocery like that isn't considered a loan. So the Ravid disagrees with this halacha. So Rav Kook mentions this Ravid, and obviously points out loans get canceled, but buying on credit from a store doesn't cancel. So the Kesef Mishna's opinion is that the Rambam's case is not considered buying on credit, which would be exempt from Shmita canceling it, because it's only called you renting a store when you buy from him several times, because then it's not a loan because you keep coming. But when it's a one-time thing, even if you would actually go to a store and buy on credit once, that wouldn't be a loan. That would be a loan, because the definition, the way that he understands it, the Kesef Mishnah understands the Rambam, is that buying on credit is when you have a line of credit at a store and you keep buying stuff on that credit. Just doing a one-time thing is a loan. Even if you would go to a store and buy on credit once, that would be considered a loan, not buying on credit from a store. And the Kesef Mishnah says in the next, also the Kesef Mishnah here also says that if you had bought something from him on credit during the week, since you could have paid for money and since you could have paid for it because it wasn't Yantif, meaning he went on Wednesday to the store. So on Wednesday, he could have paid cash, but instead of paying cash, he did the credit. This is called credit, which will not be canceled by Shmita. But if he bought it on Yantif, when there's no possibility of paying with cash, because it's muktzah, or we don't, do business transactions on Yantif, since at the time of taking the credit, he could have paid because it's Yantif. And if it wouldn't have been Yantif, he would have paid it. This, again, is not considered buying on credit. So therefore, it's just like a loan, and it gets canceled like any other loan. But the Radvaz has a different opinion, not like the Kesef Mishnah, and he says it's only considered buying on credit from a store if you have a storekeeper who usually sells it. But in this case, we're talking about a case where you don't have someone who usually extends credit to people. So therefore, it's a loan. So it's only a credit if this guy is someone who's known to extend credit because he has a store. But if one guy decided to shop, like this case, the fact that he doesn't once does not make him a shopkeeper that considers his giving credit to them, your credit at the grocery store. And the Beis Yosef, who is the Kesef Mishnah, he says that store credit that doesn't cancel a loan, that's talking about when it could be a year or too long, because then it's like there's an explicit understanding that he lent it until after Shmita, then Shmita won't cancel it according to most opinions. But anything which he immediately that he collects on right away, then it would get canceled. So the Beis Yosef says that part of the definition of buying of credit is that the storekeeper lets your account stay for a long time. But if you buy once and then you collect it, and then you buy another time, you collect it right away, that's considered a loan and not buying on credit. So if it's a loan, Shmita cancels it. If it's buying on credit from the storekeeper, then Shmita doesn't cancel it. But Shvius Mishametas as Hamilva Afilu Milva Shabashtar Sheish Ba'Charetz Nechasim Hareza Mashma. Shmita cancels loans even if it was a written, documented loan that you had pledged your assets to repay, meaning like a mortgage. So but in this case, we're not just talking about that it was the mortgage on a house, but you took a loan and you secured the loan with property. That's still canceled. But if you kind of gave him part of the field when you lent it to him, it doesn't cancel, because the Rambam is going to say later, because there is a halacha, the Gemara in Mako says that if you if you lend with the collateral, the fact that you give a collateral is as if the loan was already collected. So even though you're eventually going to pay back the loan, you're going to get your collateral back. The collateral makes it to a degree like it's paid, that to the extent that Shmitta won't cancel that loan. So I think that's what this halacha is saying. If you give him a little bit of the land, whatever that means, I'm not sure exactly what that means, that makes it as if it's paid to the extent that Shmitta will not cancel that loan. Shmitta also cancels an oath because it says do not press, never, however it is, not to pay back and not to make a shvua. Meaning there's certain halachas where someone there's certain cases where you have to pay something. We don't know for sure you owe it, but you have to pay it unless you take an oath. So if you hadn't taken the oath yet, and then Shmita came, then you don't have to pay that thing. So for example, let's say, he said, I lent you $100, please pay me back. He says, I did borrow 50 from you. So that's called motive amixas. You agree to part of it. So in the case of motive amixas, you have to take a shvua that I promise that you shvua, not just promise that's what you did, and then in that case you will be exempt from paying. So in this case, he will, if the end of Shemitah came, he will be exempt from having to take that shvua. So there's opinion according to the Shmita nowadays, which only is Rabbanan, it does not cancel a loan which a written loan which has property, real estate pledged to pay back the loan. And it seems that Tosfos' opinion is, he doesn't explicitly say it, but it seems that Tosfos' opinion is that according to this opinion, this is only true if the fact that the pledged property is explicitly written in the document. But if it's not explicit, and even if they agree, even though we hold that it would have been a mistake by the scribe who wrote the document, and in this, whatever, for technical reasons, that halacha, in that case, we agree that you could collect from pledged loans, but because that's not because of the shtar itself. So therefore, in this case, that type of shtar would not cancel, would not be, the Shmita would cancel it. It wouldn't be immune from Shmita canceling it. And it seems from Tosfos and Shavuos that it doesn't matter. And if the basin would allow you to collect because of the property, then Shmita won't cancel it, even though it's not explicit in the document. And there's another opinion that this is only when you're not able. Yeah, I don't know what this is saying. I don't know if this is talking about a case where you're. I don't know. So I'm not gonna. Okay, so I think I may have mentioned this last week, right? I was talking to someone. What about a heter iska? So a heter iska is if you want to take a loan from someone, so you can't, we're not allowed to charge or pay interest to a Jew, ribis. It's called interest. But the halacha is that if you could take a loan which would be considered partial, half loan and half investment money. So meaning I'm taking him a loan, but by taking this loan, he also becomes a partner with me. So there's only a loan on part and an investment on this. So in that case, you're allowed to pay interest because the interest isn't on the loan part. The interest is on a dividend or whatever that I have to pay you as a partner. So that's called a heter iska. So Shmita will cancel out the loan part of this arrangement. Okay, if you had a partner and they were busy with merchandise and with documents, and one of the partners had it, Shmita wouldn't cancel it because a Shmita only cancels a loan. But I guess these are, I don't know if they're considered investments or what. But especially if that one partner finished all of his partner responsibility and there's nothing with which to pay back unless he would borrow from someone else, still it wouldn't get canceled since it was a partnership, not a loan. So Shmita doesn't cancel it because this was a partnership arrangement, not a loan. Anything which isn't a loan. But if you sold him something, what if you sold someone and sold something and you didn't put a date on when he has to pay? So Shmita does not cancel it since it wasn't originally as a loan, meaning it became a loan, but when I sold it, he had to pay me, and then after he didn't pay me, so this is different than credit, than buying on the credit from the storekeeper, because that originally was done as credit. So that's a different discussion. But here is, you're supposed to pay me, and then because you didn't pay me, we agreed that the amount that you owe me to buy it becomes a new loan. So that doesn't get canceled from Shmita, since at the time of the exchange of goods, it ended up it wasn't a loan, so Shmita doesn't cancel it. And what if a guarantor paid back the loan because the borrower didn't pay it? So really the borrower should pay it back to the guarantor. If Shmita came in between, so Shmita does cancel it and the lender would not pay back to the guarantor. So even though the original lender already got paid, the Shmita would also cancel any obligation he has to pay the guarantor. Zion. When did I say? Okay, so I gave the wrong example when I talked about Shvuah. When did we say that the Shemitah doesn't cancel? I mean that Shemitah cancels a loan. That's if it's only a rabbinic loan. The example I gave was a Torah. Was a case where you're obligated to make a loan on a Torah level, and by making the oath, excuse me, not a loan, take an oath, and by taking the oath, you're exempt from paying. But no, this is talking about a case that it's the Shavua that the Beis Din can make you take, which is a rabbinic thing, that if you would admit, then Shemitah would cancel them. But a Shavuos HaShomer V'Ashut V'Yotze Behem, Mishvuos HaShem Yoda Yishalem, but if there's a case where he's denying part of the claim, if he would agree he would have to pay, raise a shavar achar Shemitah, you could still pay the loan after Shemitah. So we're gonna skip the discussion from so Rav Kook says, since Shemitah doesn't cancel the essence of the obligation within it, so the Shemitah doesn't cancel the Shavua either. Let's say you lent him money, you collected from him, and then he denied ever taking the loan. The Shemitah came in, he keeps denying that he ever borrowed the money. And then after Shemitah, he agrees, I did take a loan. Because why did he do this? He knew Shemitah cancels it. So he was playing this game to not pay back. Or, they were denying, but it was he said and he said. But then after Shemitah, witnesses came and said, yes, we saw that Shimon borrowed the money. So now that there's real Adam, it's collectible, then Shemitah doesn't cancel it. Shemitah does not cancel it, so the guy can still collect the loan. But Rav Kook says if he finally admitted to the loan before Shemitah ended, then Shemitah cancels it. So since there was a time before Shemitah ended that the loan was collectible, then Shemitah will cancel it. What if you borrowed from someone in the 6th year, and then after Shemitah you became partners, or one of them became a sharecropper to the other one? You're not allowed to roll over an oath for what he had borrowed before Shemitah, even though now that they're partners or one's a sharecropper, they have a new obligation to make an oath. But if they became partners or one was a sharecropper on Erev Shmita, and they split the earnings, whatever. And after Shmita, a loan was taken, and then because of this loan, you're obligated to take a shvuah, whether it's a Torah shvuah, whether it's a rabbinic shvuah. Then you can also roll over an oath from before Shmita, because Shmita again only cancels a loan, not something paying out from a partnership or a sharecropper arrangement or something like that. If someone is obligated to pay their friend something and he made so in some cases on a rabbinic level, Reuven says you owe me money. In certain cases, Shimon says no, I don't. In certain cases, if Reuven is willing to take the oath, then Shimon has to pay. So anything that Shemitah would cancel, he's also exempt from a shvuah, because he will not. We don't have him swear to pay only when you're chayav to pay min adin. But if there's a possibility it's not chayav min adin to pay, then we don't take a shvuah. If you collected money and then you denied it, so meaning if Reuven said, I want you to pay me back, please, and Shimon says, I never borrowed from you, and then Reuven brought witnesses that he did, who saw the loan take place, and Beis Din obligated him to pay, and the Beis Din wrote a psak din that he was obligated to pay, it's considered collected, even though he didn't collect, and Shmita doesn't cancel it. So a loan is a loan, but once Beis Din said you're obligated to pay, because Beis Din would have power to enforce it, it's as if it already got paid, and therefore it's not considered a loan anymore, and Shmita doesn't cancel it. Okay, the next few halachas, there's very little in the book mentions. Let's see, there's a lot of halachas to read. Halacha test. If you lent your friend someone money and you made the deadline to pay 10 years away, it won't cancel, because definitely Shemitah is going to come in the middle. Even though it's eventually going to do that, but right now he's not able to collect. Meaning, since he wasn't able to demand the payment before Shmita, Shmita doesn't cancel it. Shmita only cancels when you're allowed to start collecting the debt. If they made a condition, a tanai, that he's not going to collect it, then Shmita will cancel the loan. Halacha Yud. If you lent someone money and you made a condition that Shmita is not going to cancel it, guess what? Shmita is still going to cancel it, because you're not allowed to negate the law of Shvius. But no time. But there's ways to word a condition where it's not considered as if you're making a condition against the Torah. If he made a condition, I will not. Because it sounds like you're in that case. It sounds like you're saying there's no halacha of Shmita. But if you say of Shmita canceling loans, but if you say I'm not going to cancel this particular loan, even if it happened on Shmita during Shmita, then the condition works. Because a monetary tanai works. It's not considered that you're making a condition against what's written in the Torah. You're making a monetary condition in this case. Because by the borrower admitting to it, agreeing to it, he admitted he obligated himself to pay money, even though the Torah wouldn't have obligated him to pay that money. He's allowed to obligate himself to pay something that the Torah doesn't obligate. Yud Aleph. So buying on credit from a storekeeper doesn't cancel a loan, but if you made it into a loan, then it does get canceled. Paying a laborer, his wages, that does not get canceled from Shmita. But if you hadn't paid him and then you rolled it into a loan, then it becomes a loan, and then Shmita cancels it. Yud Beis. If there were certain fines for raping a person or a woman, or seducing one, or someone who made a false claim against his wife, these in Parshas Mishpatim, so Shmita doesn't cancel then, but if it became into a loan, then it does get canceled. When and that becomes a loan when the Beis Din decided on the case. Yud Gimel, Hamagarshi Isho Kodem Hashmata in Ksuba Nishmetas. If someone divorced his wife before Shmita, the ksuva that he had obligated to pay her does not get canceled. But if I think he paid part of it, or again, if he said I can't pay the Shmita, so they rolled it into a loan, then it's now a loan, so Shmita will cancel it. Yudalad Hamalvaz al Mashman Eino Mashman. If you lend on collateral, the Shmita doesn't cancel the loan. V'hushi achov can get a mashman. But that's when the imhay yoser yeser mashman yeser. So that's if I think the collateral it covers is actually worth the whole amount of the loan. But if the loan was more than what the collateral was worth, so the amount up to the value of the collateral was considered collected, so that it was already considered paid, so Shmita doesn't pay it. But the extra amount, the difference between the loan, which was greater, and the value of the mashkan of the collateral, then that part does get canceled. So Rav Kook has one line. The Russian Gittin says that in such a case the Russia's opinion is that as long as there's a collateral, even though the collateral isn't worth the entire value of the loan, Shmita doesn't cancel it. Tezvav. If you give your loans over to Beis Din and you tell them, please collect this for me, then Shmita doesn't cancel it, because the pasuk says that which you have from your brother gets canceled. But this is Beis Din collecting it. And if Beis Din paskined in a case and they wrote out that so and so you are obligated to pay this so and so this much money to this other person, then it doesn't get canceled. It's as if it's already collected and it's not considered a loan. So according to what it sounds like the Gemara in Makos is that these two things work on a Torah level. But that halacha tazayin is a very important halacha. Kishara hizal hazakin shinu malhavo zezev over malchaz b'torah yisham lachapeni adavar hiskin PRUZBUL kadeshlo yashmin achavat shilavu zezeh. When Hillel the elder saw that people weren't lending money to people before Shmita because they were worried that it wasn't going to get paid back and they couldn't collect it, and that was violating the Torah's pasuk that says, "Do not be evil and not lend people when they need it." He instituted a PRUZBUL so that the obligation will not be canceled, in order that people would again lend money to each other. PRUZBUL only works nowadays that Shmita only cancels loan on a rabbinic level. But a PRUZBUL would not help for a Torah level of Shmita. The Rabbi says, I don't agree because that's only according to Abaye, but Rabbi argues and says that when you write a PRUZBUL, it's hefker. The Beis Din is saying hefker, Beis Din, hefker. Anything that the Beis Din declares ownerless, it becomes ownerless. So that works even for Torah level laws. So there are some Rishonim who seem to hold that PRUZBUL wasn't its own takana, but PRUZBUL was a form of Maval Amashton or Moser Strossel Beit. So I mean, to my mind, it makes more sense to say that if you make a PRUZBUL, it's as if Beis Din is collecting it. Except for whatever reason, the Rishonim or the commentator, maybe they're not Rishonim, maybe it's Achronim who said, they seem to equate it more with as if there's a collateral. I don't understand how that works, but that's what they say. Yod Zayin, Ein Kosvin PRUZBUL. Ein Kosvin PRUZBUL, Ela Chacham Gedolim B'Yosef Gevei Zino Rabbi Ami Rabbi Asi Shehem Merin Lafkia Mamam B'Dei Adam. Aval Shar B'Tei Dinim Ein Kosvin. You're only allowed to write a PRUZBUL if you're great sages like Rav Ami and Rav Asi. Now, Rav Ami and Rav Asi were the end of the Masorah. They're listed in the last generation of the 40 links from Moshe Rabbeinu until the end of the Gemara, because they are allowed to take away money from one person and give it to the other, but they didn't, can't. So according to the Rambam, even in the Rambam's own time, you couldn't write a PRUZBUL because we didn't have people like Rav Ami and Rav Asi anymore. So Rav Kook says, Tosos in the Ran and Gittin say, any important Beis Din, which is three people who are expert in the dinim of PRUZBUL and they know the ideas of Shmita, and and many people accept them in that community, they're allowed to write a PRUZBUL. And the Torah says any basin of 3 people, even if they're of no expertise, are allowed to write a PRUZBUL. So that's what most people nowadays do. Any 3 people could sign. HALACHA Yud Ches. This is the main. This is the body of the PRUZBUL. I'm giving over to you Ploni and Ploni, the Dayanim. So there seems to be a mistake here, because if there's Dayanim, it has to be 3, but he only listens 2 people's name here. So the Dayanim in such and such a place, any obligation that I have, I can collect it any time that I want. And the Dayanim or the Adam will sign underneath. Yod Tes, Ein Kosmin PRUZBUL ala Karka. You can only write PRUZBUL if you own land. If the borrower doesn't have any real estate, he doesn't own any land, the Malva will sell him even a tiny amount in order that the PRUZBUL will work. If he lent him place for an oven or for a different type of oven, you could write, because the oven takes up space on the land, you're allowed to. So the fact that he has enough ownership to have the oven there, that considers that he's in charge of that land, and you could write a PRUZBUL on that. If he had a mortgaged property, meaning he had that tied up for another loan, so even though that loan, to a certain extent, that land doesn't belong to him, because he might have to go to a different borrower, a different lender. But no, it's slow enough. It's considered his enough to the extent that the PRUZBUL works for it. Kosman leish al nichse isho lishom al nichse apitrapos. You could write it for a man for the property of his wife, meaning if she doesn't own land, but if for whatever reason someone would owe money to a woman, as long as her husband owes land. A man doesn't own land, but his wife in the ksuva and stuff owns land, so he's considered that he owns land, and you can write a PRUZBUL, or so he is to collect from him. And Yisomim, orphans who halachically don't have anything, or maybe they don't have any real estate, but the father's estate owes money to people. So the apitrapos, the guardian, who based in a point who's in charge of the father's estate. So if the apitrapos he owns land, so then people could write a PRUZBUL so they could collect loans from the Yisomim, the father's estate, when the kids are going to grow up. There's technical reasons, that we don't collect from them while they're still minors. If one person borrowed from 5 lenders, he has to write a PRUZBUL for each one. But 5 people that borrowed from one, it's enough for 1 PRUZBUL for all of them. Because of a PRUZBUL, if you wrote a PRUZBUL and then you made a loan, it doesn't help. The PRUZBUL only works for a loan that was already loaned. It doesn't work. Shmitta will cancel it until you write the PRUZBUL after the loan took place. So let's say you wrote a PRUZBUL a month ago. So any loan which was already extant before you wrote the PRUZBUL, that worked. But if the same people engaged in another loan after the PRUZBUL was written, you'd have to write a new PRUZBUL later. This original PRUZBUL doesn't help. We're just going to read the halachos until the end of the parak. Lefikach PRUZBUL hamukdam kasher. Therefore, a predated PRUZBUL is okay, but a post-dated PRUZBUL is not okay. Ketad kaso b'Nisan v'hiktim zmanu me Adar kasher. If you wrote it in Nisan, but you dated it in Adar, which is the month before Nisan, it's kosher, because it doesn't include anything that actually happened after the PRUZBUL. Sharei hura kocho sheino mashmid al Adar. The lender is making himself in a worse situation. He's foregoing loans that happened after Adar. But if he wrote it he was writing, right after Pesach, but he wrote that it was Iyar already, then it's puzzle, because he's trying to collect loans that he doesn't really deserve to, because he didn't make those loans yet. She'eno mashmat ad eir shlo kedin. She'en dino shlo yishmat ela ad nisan b'shas mesiras hadvarim lebeis. The things that get canceled, the things that Shmita will not cancel only goes to the time when you actually get the shtar from Beis Din. So anything you lent after that is not affected at all by this PRUZBUL. If you find a loan document after Shmita, but you don't find any PRUZBUL, it's not collectible. If you said I had it beforehand, but I had the PRUZBUL, but I lost it, we believe him. There was a time of danger that the lender was able to collect without a PRUZBUL. Furthermore, even if the Baal Chov, the lender, would come with the loan document, or he came to collect from a verbal loan, we would tell the alleged borrower, pay up. And if the borrower, the alleged borrower, says, "Where's your PRUZBUL?" We tell him to say, we tell the lender, we tell the lender to say, you should respond that I had a PRUZBUL and lost it, and then he'd be believed. We ask him, did you have a PRUZBUL that was lost? If he says yes, we believe it. But if he agreed that he didn't write a PRUZBUL, then he's not able to collect. And Yisomim, so orphans who are minors, they don't need a PRUZBUL because right now, and they could still, the debts that the loans that their father had extended to someone else can still be collected after Shmita. So let's say the lender has a PRUZBUL, but the borrower says the loan that you're trying to collect right now was written after your PRUZBUL that you have there. But the lender who's trying to get his money back, he says, no, it was before the time of the PRUZBUL was written. We believe him, and the Shmita does not cancel that loan. So if he would have said, I had it and I lost it, he's also believed, even though we don't know the time of it, but we believe him. The halacha is we believe him. Chavav, Tana Nitvav Amar Milva Yeshlo Etz. Vatovea Omer. So in this case, the borrower says, I have a loan from you. And the Tovea says, no, it wasn't a loan. It was credit from the store. She'ena nishmetes, sharei lo zakati milva, harei zanema. Because I know that it wasn't a loan because I know Shmita would cancel it. So I only sold it to you on credit. So then he's believed and he could still collect it. So these are halachas of Megu. Megu is a thing where you have a certain believability because you could have given a different claim. So from the fact that you didn't make a better claim, we believe this claim that's not as good. So since he could have said, I had a PRUZBUL and I lost it, we would have believed him. So the fact that he said, the money that you owe me is not from a loan, but it's from store credit, we believe him. Once the Chachamim instituted a PRUZBUL, the Chazaka is that a person isn't going to push away something that's allowed and do something that's not allowed. If he's saying it, it must have been something that's allowed. Tamid Chachamim shulvu zeh u'masar dvarav letalmidim v'amar masrani lechem shekol chov sheish li shagavenu kol zvat sheretza ino tzarich lit PRUZBUL. Tamid Chachamim who lent to each other, and they told their students, and they made a verbal declaration of the PRUZBUL in front of their students, do not need to write a PRUZBUL. Because they know that Shmita nowadays is only rabbinic, and it could be pushed off verbally, so this works for them. And the Ravid completely disagrees with that halacha, that words are good to verbal PRUZBUL words. Whoever returns, so a borrower who, even though the loan got canceled, if he wants to return it, the spirit of the Chachamim is pleasant with him. They're happy that he's paying it back. However, the lender needs to say, I had canceled the loan and you don't owe me anything. And the borrower says, nevertheless, I want you to accept this. The lender is allowed to accept that payment. The pasuk is you can't press him for it. And here you didn't press him for it, so you're allowed to take the payment. So the borrower is not supposed to say, I'm paying this for my loan. No, he should say, this is my money, but I want to give you a gift. If the borrower paid back but didn't make this statement, they go around back and forth until the lender could get the borrower to say that this was my money and I'm giving you a gift. If he didn't say this, he's not allowed to accept it. If the borrower would just, it will just eventually take his money back. Lamed Misha Nimna Milhavos as Chaver Kodem Shmita Shema Yisachar Chov Shalo. Yishmad over below say. Whoever holds back from lending someone before Shmita because they're worried that he's going to be late in paying back and Shmita is going to cancel it out, you transgress a negative commandment. Shnemer Hisham Elacha. Be careful lest you turn away from the poor person who needs a loan. The Chet Gadol, it's a great sin. The Torah says two words of a negative commandment. Hisham Elacha, be careful, which is a negative commandment, and pen, lest you do this. Whenever the Torah says the word Hishamer, be careful from, or guard from, or pen, lest you do this, or al, don't do this, it's a negative commandment. So the Torah used two words or verbs of a negative commandment. The Torah was very much opposed to having this attitude, and it called it bilial, evil. The Torah adds and warns you and commands you not just that you're not allowed to withhold a loan, but you're actually obligated to give him the loan. You shall surely give him the money, and your heart should not be bad when you give him the money, or that you are giving him the money. And Hashem promised you reward in this world. By giving a loan, Hashem is going to bless you. So that's the end of this parak, and that's actually as far as Rav Kook wrote in the Sefer. So next few weeks we can't have, because of the fast day and because of the other things, but after this we'll come back to finish up the 6th parak and do the 7th parak and the 8th parak. The halachas from the rest of the Rambam Hilchos Shmita Yovel are about Yovel, so Rav Kook did not write about them because they have no obligation in our days. Hopefully tomorrow Mashiach will come, and tomorrow we'll have to know it. So the way the Rambam says it makes it sound like it's like an addendum to the loan document, but nowadays we're not at all concerned about that. You write a PRUZBUL and you just keep your PRUZBUL, and we just write one PRUZBUL. We don't write PRUZBULs for different loans. Yeah.